Bring to us your poetry from inspiration sought. Come join us with your images, your verses, words, and thoughts. From here, we'll share your balladry with those who do not know it. This platform's here for you to show the world that you're the poet.
Welcome to episode 7 of You're the Poet, the poetry podcast featuring you. I'm host Matt Bergio, and I'm here with co-host Phil Bergio. Phil, welcome.
Thank you.
Here at You're the Poet, our purpose is to share our love of poetry with the world and invite you to do the same. If you've written any poetry and you want to share it here, whether you just have an interest in poetry, consider yourself an amateur poet, or are a professional poet with published works, contact us to be a guest on a future episode. Please check out the website at www.yourthepoet.com. There's a section there that answers questions about being a guest. Follow us on Facebook for updates and info, and send us an email to host@yourthepoet.com for feedback or questions about the podcast and how to be our next guest. Our featured guest for this episode of You're the Poet is Mary Coley. Mary, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We're glad you could join us, and we look forward to your contribution to the episode. To start things off, I'm going to share a classic poem for the episode. I'll be sharing parts 1 and 2 of Samuel Taylor Coleridge's Rime of the Ancient Mariner. The argument for this, or the description, that's just the word they used back then, how a ship, having passed the line, was driven by storms to the cold country towards the South Pole, and how from thence she made her course to the tropical latitude of the great Pacific Ocean, and of the strange things that befell, and in what manner the ancient mariner came back to his own country. So this is one of my favorite poems ever. It's a long poem. It's actually 7 parts. Didn't want to take the time to read all 7 parts. Just wanted to give our listeners a taste of the poem. So I'm only going to read parts 1 and 2, mainly because part 2 has a lot of my favorite stanzas from the poem. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. It is an ancient mariner, and he stoppeth, one of 3. By thy long grey beard and glittering eye, now wherefore stoppeth thou me? The bridegroom's doors are open wide, and I am next of kin. The guests are met, the feast is set, mayst hear the merry din. He holds them with his skinny hand. There was a ship, quoth he. Hold off, unhand me, grey-beard loon. Eftsoons his hand dropped he. He holds him with a glittering eye. The wedding guest stood still, and listens like a 3 years' child. The mariner hath his will. The wedding guest sat on a stone, he cannot choose but hear, and thus spake on that ancient man, the bright-eyed mariner. The ship was cheered, the harbor cleared, merrily did we drop, below the kirk, below the hill, below the lighthouse top. The sun came up upon the left, out of the sea came he, and he shone bright, and on the right went down into the sea. Higher and higher every day, till over the mast at noon, the wedding guest here beat his breast, for he heard the loud bassoon. The bride hath paced into the hall, red as a rose is she, nodding their heads before her goes the merry minstrelsy. The wedding guest he beat his breast, yet he cannot choose but hear, and thus spake on that ancient man, the bright-eyed mariner. And now the storm blast came, and he was tyrannous and strong. He struck with his o'ertaking wings, and chased us south along. With sloping masts and dipping prow, as he pursued with yell and blow, still treads the shadow of his foe, and forward bends his head. The ship drove fast, loud roared the blast, and southward, aye, we fled. And now there came both mist and snow, and it grew wondrous cold, and ice mast high came floating by, as green as emerald. And through the drifts the snowy cliffs did send a dismal sheen, nor shapes of men nor beast we ken, the ice was all between. The ice was here, the ice was there, the ice was all around. It cracked and growled and roared and howled like noises in a swound. At length did cross an albatross, through the fog it came. As if it had been a Christian soul, we hailed it in God's name. It ate the food it ne'er had eat, and round it flew. The ice did split with a thunder fit, the helmsman steered us through. And a good south wind sprung up behind, the albatross did follow, and every day for food or play came to the mariner's hollow. In mist or cloud, on mast or shroud, it perched for vespers 9, whilst all the night through fog smoke white glimmered the white moonshine. God save thee, ancient mariner, from the fiends that plague thee thus. Why lookest thou so? With my crossbow I shot the albatross. Part 2. The sun now rose upon the right, out of the sea came he, still hid in mist, and on the left went down into the sea. And the good south wind still blew behind, but no sweet bird did follow, nor any day for food or play came to the mariner's hollow. And I had done a hellish thing, and it would work 'em woe, for all averred I'd killed the bird that made the breeze to blow. Ah, wretch, said they, the bird to slay that made the breeze to blow. Nor dim nor red, like God's own head, the glorious sun uprist. Then all averred I'd killed the bird that brought the fog and mist. 'Twas right, said they, such birds to slay that bring the fog and mist. The fair breeze blew, the white foam flew, the furrow followed free. We were the first that ever burst into that silent sea. Down dropped the breeze, the sails dropped down, 'twas sad as sad could be, and we did speak only to break the silence of the sea. All in a hot and copper sky, the bloody sun at noon, right up above the mast did stand, no bigger than the moon. Day after day, day after day, we stuck nor breath nor motion, as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. Water, water everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. The very deep did rot, O Christ, that ever this should be. Yea, slimy things did crawl with legs upon the slimy sea. About, in reel and rout, the death fires danced at night. The water, like a witch's oils, burnt green and blue and white. And some in dreams assured were of the spirit that plagued us so. 9 fathoms deep he had followed us from the land of mist and snow. And every tongue through utter drought was withered at the root. We could not speak, no more than if we had been choked with soot. Ah, well a day, what evil looks had I from old and young. Instead of the cross, the albatross about my neck was hung. Samuel Taylor Coleridge. So that's parts 1 and 2 of the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Thoughts, Phil?
And there's 7 parts to it.
There are 7 parts.
I'm going to have to now get it and read the rest of it. I don't think I've ever read the whole thing. I mean, I recognize some of the excerpts and stuff like that, but got to check out the whole thing now.
I think recently when I was cleaning out my storage unit, I actually found I have it's like a standalone book of the Rime of the Ancient Mariner.
Okay.
Mary, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I really like how like older poetry is written. Is that older?
Oh yeah. This is yeah,
Um,
18 something, 1834, I think.
I enjoy how older poetry is written, but I find it a little harder to connect with and understand because of the specific words that are used and how it is written. So for me, it would take really taking a look at it to try to understand the message that it's conveying to the full extent that it is.
I agree there. In fact, I will admit I had to look up a couple words. Was curious about some of those words he uses. I was like, I have no idea what that means. Like, what are they referring to? Some of it was like the wedding decorations and things, and I'm like, oh, okay. Oh. Yeah, I don't know if you listened to the episode with Mars Robinson. She commented on that when we were sharing William Wordsworth's "I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud." And she was talking about where her experiences were totally different and that she couldn't relate or had a hard time relating to some of the poetry.
Yeah.
All right. Well, from there, we're going to turn it over to Phil to share one of his poems.
Okay, I wrote this today. I had the inspiration laying in bed in the morning, and it's basically about my garden. A lot of my poems are about gardening and my yard and the outdoors, and that's my inspiration. It's called The Volunteer. Of all the flora in the yard, my pet is the volunteer that tries so hard. It grew from unseen seeds and fought its way through the many weeds. It won the battle and reaches tall while bearing fruit to nourish all. I'm thankful for the gift that grew and hoping the next spring it will return anew. Phil Burgio.
All right. Nice. Thank you for sharing.
If you're a gardener, you kind of might know what a volunteer is. It's like a tomato plant that just kind of shows up. And it's one of the best tomato plants in my yard.
I admire that you have the ability to write about things like that.
It just comes to you.
Yeah, I like that. I'm privy to the fact that I know which tomato plant he's referring to, but I actually learned the term volunteer just earlier this year. I went to some friends over on the other side of the state in Athens, Ohio, who had pawpaw trees, and they had some grapevine, what she called volunteers. And I was like, I had no idea what she meant by that till I learned that it meant we didn't plant it; it
It just showed up.
volunteered itself to be there. So I like the imagery there. So thank you. All right, so I'm going to share a poem now. This poem was written some years ago during the Quadrantan meteor shower, and I was thinking about it recently because Perseid meteor shower is currently going on. I think it peaks somewhere around August 11th. So if you're checking the skies out, they say mostly during dawn, but this had me thinking about that. This is kind of not really a love poem, but a sort of a regret to love. This poem's called As One Romantic Falls, written in the ballad form, kind of like a letter to somebody. All through my life, I always try to be or consider myself the hopeless romantic or try to be romantic. And, even the best of us mess up sometimes. So this was sort of a kind of response to that. So this was a poem I had written due to that. As one romantic falls, both hearts they sink like setting sun to darkness as love stalls, and hope is vanquished, but not lost as one romantic falls. Go look into the northeast sky at 2:30 or 3. Forgive me for this mess I've made, and save a star for me. I too will watch the skies tonight, and wish a wish so true, and every star that lights the sky I'll dedicate to you. A special star I'll catch and keep to warm a gloomy day, when I may need a spark from you to guide me on my way. Perhaps you'll see a star I see, the same one flashing by, and somehow we'll create a link across the distant sky. Behold the magic of the stars, the gift they have is real, for saddened hearts that may be broke may slowly start to heal. So make a wish upon a star for all to turn out well, and mend the damage that was dealt when one romantic fell. Matthew Bergio. All right, that was sort of I'm gonna say kind of like an apology letter in a poem, I guess.
I'm now to go check out some meteors tonight. So, Mary, what'd you think of his poem?
I personally think that it was very heartfelt and beautifully written.
Thank you.
He's one of those 19th century romantics.
What I might have mentioned earlier on one of the podcast episodes that where I'm even always telling my dad is that a lot of my poetry is personal. It's written to people or has to do with my love life and different aspects of it or whatever. Although not all of it is. Some of it's nature related and things like that.
And I told him a lot of the classic poems are the same. Evangeline by Edgar Allan Poe. Tell me that's not a personal poem.
True.
Yeah.
And I know Shakespeare wrote a lot of sonnets and things, but
I've written personal poems.
All right. Well, from there, we're going to move on. Mary, welcome to the show. You're the poet. Show us what you've got.
All right. Thank you for having me. I got introduced to poetry just through my own personal experiences, struggling to find a way to express myself because I definitely couldn't verbally get words out, but my writing definitely did the talking for me. So the poem that I'm about to read really opened my mind to poetry because I learned my writings could express the things I verbally could not. This poem takes place in a very rough time in my life. This poem is called Your Ghost. I find myself talking to the ghost of your essence. I ponder in the loneliness awaiting your presence. Looking through the memories that intertwined our souls, the beginning and endings, my tears begin to flow. Pregnant with your baby, that moment I broke. Excruciating internal pain, Lord knows I can never fully explain. What would it have been like if I had stayed? Though still a question that will always remain, I will always remember this pain. I never been this vulnerable in my entire life, but I also had no one to give me any advice. I walked these nights completely alone, the darkest place inside began to grow. A emptiness inside my chest, a hollow soul put to rest. I vowed that I would become better, but without you I felt completely severed. Every moment I lied awake was every moment I mentally sank. Whenever you came around, I was met with my deepest desires, wanting to dive right into your embrace, but was met with a solemn, stone-cold face. flashing back to all the fights where I was met with drunken eyes emptier than sweet white lies. My heart rebroke a million times. As time went on, the pain grew thicker. I saw you lost weight and was awfully thinner. Every day you seemed to grow sicker. Met with this awful taste, I wish I could replace your pain, regardless of the mishaps that took place. You will always be the only person who has my heart in hand, even if you want to crush it or mend it back you can't. Every night I sat alone, a picnic table overgrown, looking into the dark forestry view set a tone that it was set in stone, my heart you now don't own. Overwhelmed with our chats, they never went well or seemed to last. Brewing in the mist of tension, custody began of mention. Our little girl left to listen. Night terrors she awakes, her beautiful soul was enduring pain. Mommy held her while she ate. I caught her tears, well ashamed. Inside and out I tried to hide my pain, but emotionally distraught I remained. Constantly stone-cold sober, my depression grew much bolder. Surrounded by doubts and regret, I didn't know it at the time, but I was honestly blessed. Carrying number 2, I didn't know what I was going to do. Lost and confused, I took the loss and I made a move. My choices I thought at the time were right, but in the end they took my mind. I fight to stay present and I fight to remain, but I always fight for the ones I love to this day. Mary Coley. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Wow, Mary, that was deep. I could understand it if you're having problems saying that, expressing your words and writing it down. We did a great job of expressing yourself in the writing.
Thank you. It was a very hard one to write at the time, and definitely is a little bit hard to read.
I can see that. That's thank you for sharing something so personal. I think that's part of, I think, what maybe makes poets so apprehensive to share their works is a lot of our works are personal and involve, deep personal things like that situation. And thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I think that's where you find the beauty in it.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got another one for us?
Yeah, I can read it whenever.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
you're the poet.
In the cosmic dance where fate entwines, two souls embark on a journey divine. A profound love, a connection untold, yet the universe casts obstacles bold. Through storms that raged and winds that sighed, they stood together side by side. In the crucible of trials and strife, they discovered the essence of life. Commitment whispered in every shared breath as they navigated the dance of life and death. In the tapestry of time, they wove a story of growth, love, concern, and boundless glory. Challenges like tempests sought to sever, yet they clung together stronger than ever. Hand in hand, they faced the cosmic tide, their love an anchor, their hearts as their guide. With each obstacle, a lesson was learned. In the alchemy of pain, resilience earned. They built a fortress on love's sacred art, guarding against the universe's attempt to part. Through ebb and flow, a symphony played, a harmonious tune that would never fade. In the crucible of trials, they found the strength to keep their love unbound. As stars aligned and destiny smiled, they triumphed over fate, reconciled. A tale of growth, commitment, and love, a testament to what two hearts can dream of. Mary Coley. Thank you.
That was good. That was a nice turnabout.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like the contrast of that
Yeah.
to the other one.
That's specifically why I chose those two.
It's good.
Yeah, great pairing. I love some of the imagery there. I can't remember the exact line, but there were a couple of lines in there that I really liked the way you wrote them. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's I like the upliftingness of that and kind of like the fighting against the world, even with the hardships that are coming through, and together you're standing strong. I like that idea and that concept.
I kind of related a little bit to that.
Yeah. Nice. Well, thank you very much for sharing. Was there anything else you wanted to share with us, or are those the only two you have for today?
Right now, that's the only two I have today.
Okay, and that's totally fine. And you're always welcome to come back in the future and share any other poetry with us. I always like to invite my guests. As I was telling my dad, we're hoping to do a haiku episode for episode 10. I don't know if you're familiar with the haiku form. I'll probably reach out to you to see if you'd be interested in just doing a quick recording of a haiku for that episode. We'll try to get all our previous guests on to do a haiku.
Yeah, I'll definitely be interested. I'll probably have to do some research to figure out what exactly that is.
Yeah, not a problem.
Can I ask what the inspiration was to creating this podcast?
Um, I had just, I don't know. I had done a podcast for part of my music education master's degree, but it was like music education, and I had a guest on every episode with aspects of music education. So I had a little bit of podcast background, and I was wanting to do something, and just my love of poetry. And my dad's always telling me, oh, you need to publish your poems. So, like, I thought this would kind of be a good way to get my poetry out there without actually publishing yet. And then originally started, my dad was just going to be my first guest, like to come on and be the first guest. But then I just decided I'd ask him if he'd be a co-host with me.
He didn't kind of ask me, just introduced me as his co-host.
Oh, well, yeah, just for the love of poetry. I like sharing poetry. And I think for me, hearing poetry spoken to me is different than just reading it. Like even the poem that Phil shared today, me reading it, I was like, well, I don't know if this flows right. I was like, well, let me hear you read it. And then him reading it, I was like, okay, that sounds like you and your poetry. I said, it's just a little different than how I would read it in my head. So just something to get out there and hopefully build a poetry community.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention too, for our listeners, that I was really excited about this episode because two reasons. One, this is episode 7, and I was reading somewhere that most podcasts they only average about 6 episodes before they fade out or go away. So making it to episode 7, I was kind of excited that okay, well we broke the average.
Yeah.
And also, Mary, I'm very thankful that you reached out to us. You were the first person to email us and to reach out to say, hey, I'm interested in being on the podcast. So that was very exciting for me as we try to build this You're the Poet community. It's really great to see people reaching out and that the word's getting spread out there and we're getting more and more listeners.
I had thought that the people that were previously on your podcast had reached out to you.
Some of them did. I know Brett Elridge, his episode, he kind of reached out to me because he like listened to it and he hadn't written a lot of poetry. He's like, man, you guys are inspiring me. Though I think I kind of egged him on to be like, hey, why don't you come on to the podcast? And he was sort of apprehensive because he was very new to getting back into poetry, but he agreed to come on. So no, like a couple of those guests were like my cousin and my aunt. So there are people that I know, some people I knew from work. So we're trying to get it out there. And I've got a couple other people who have contacted me through Facebook. So anybody out there listening, we're looking for guests all the time. I want this podcast to start coming out weekly. Right now, it's on the verge of like 3 weeks to a month between episodes. So, Mary, thank you very much again for being on.
Yeah, Mary, thank you. Nice to meet you too. Hope to
Thank
hear
you.
you again over here.
I definitely would want to come back.
Well, thank you. We
good.
look forward to hearing from you again. All right, from there, I'm going to wrap up the episode. I have no feedback for this episode, so please, listeners, give us some feedback. Shoot us an email at host@you'rethepoet.com. Look us up on Facebook, and you can write a comment under the post that includes this episode for feedback. Let us know what you thought of Mary and her poetry. Check out the website at www.you'rethepoet.com. You can find a frequently asked questions section there about being a guest if you're interested in being a guest. You can also see some other information about the episodes that we've recorded. Also, exciting news, we're on the verge of launching our new logo. We've got an actual You're the Poet logo being designed, and hopefully that will be out maybe later this week. So be looking for that on Facebook and on the website. And thank you for listening to us. Again, Phil, thank you for joining us.
Anytime.
Mary, thanks for being our guest.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. All right, guys, thank you and goodbye.